Welcome on into Forward Progress presented by Fanduel Sportsbook. I'm your host, Eric Pauly, joined today with Judah and Suma. TA is not here today. He is traveling. We will miss him greatly, but of course, we have two great football minds to discuss some key takeaways from last week, some opening lines for upcoming week 8, and of course, finishing off with Monday Night Football. We will touch on some futures markets as the MVP market has caught our eye because right now, really no clear-cut winner by any means. So we'll get into all of that discussion as we dive into the show. But gentlemen, as always, as we start off the Monday show, we're going to discuss some things from last week that we're going to be using to formulate our opinions moving forward as the season progresses. And first things first, the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, this is a team that I know TA was very high on coming to the season. I was as well. Obviously had some bumps and bruises along the way, but they got a major win against the Giants at MetLife yesterday. But Jalen Hurts has not looked like the same Jalen Hurts that took this Eagles team to the Super Bowl. Suma, you wanted to mention how even though the Eagles blew out the Giants, you were not impressed with Jalen Hurts. Talk to us about what you saw from Hurts and the Eagles on Sunday.
Yeah, so full disclaimer, I'm not a all-22 kind of guy who goes back and watches like every snap, but I watched that game on the side and I could really not believe the score when just watching Jalen Hurts play. I think at some point the Eagles just decided to lean heavily on the run game, which worked well. Giants offense was a disaster, and that was enough. But I think that there are some underlying issues with the passing offense. Granted, no Dallas Goedert, no John Mailata. And I think that the Giants' defensive line, even though Brian Burns went out with a groin injury at some point, is also pretty good. But I think something with that Eagles passing game is just not clicking, and it just doesn't feel that good compared to years past.
Yeah, we saw the Jalen Hurts, of course, like you mentioned, not looking that great. Did find A.J. Brown on a long touchdown, though. That seemed more like not a blown coverage, but you had A.J. Brown going one-on-one against a bad defender. I think that was even potentially a linebacker. A.J. Brown's going to win that many times. But, Judah, talk to us about what you're seeing from the Eagles and maybe Jalen Hurts in particular.
Yeah, I think we talked about this kind of at the outset of, or I should say, in previewing this game, that like Jalen Hurts has been especially sensitive to pressure this year, and Lane Johnson missed some time, and now Jordan Mailata's out with injury, and I think that really showed. He took like 4 sacks on not like I think it's like 20-something dropbacks. He's not handling pressure well, and I think we basically only have a sample of Jalen Hurts with like absolute studs on the offensive line. Right, they lost Jason Kelce in the offseason. Now they've been dealing with injuries. I think this is a different team. And sure, they got some home run balls from Saquon Barkley, who's taken a bunch to the house. But you got to wonder how sustainable that is. And I think if the Eagles kind of are to hit their ceiling, they're going to need to get this passing game going. And I'd be a little bit skeptical given, at least right now, the state of the offensive line. I think this was a pretty misleading 28-3 victory. I don't think the offense moved the ball particularly well. And certainly the Giants' offensive line and the Eagles' defensive line. Maybe that's a good takeaway is the Eagles' defensive line seems to kind of be emerging, looking a lot more like the 2022 unit than the 2023 unit. But I think the offense has left a lot to be desired and is still not exactly at that level of the 2022 and first half of 2023 offense.
Definitely something to note, the Eagles offense. That defensive line finally woke up, if I'm not mistaken, coming into that game against the Giants. One of the lower teams in terms of pressure rate. And they had Daniel Jones, It's got Jaden Daniels in my brain, of course. I hope he's okay. But Daniel Jones into a world of hurt, a bunch of sacks, and that Eagles defensive line finally woke up. And if the offense is going to play like how they have been playing, they're definitely going to need that defensive line to step up. Let's talk a little bit more about teams that need somebody to step up, especially due to injuries. The New York Jets get absolutely embarrassed on primetime last night against the Steelers. And a lot of injuries are concerning for the New York Jets and the way that they're getting shredded on the ground. And then Russell Wilson, of course, had some success as well. Judah, what are you noticing about the New York Jets defense, and how are they going to be able to really overcome some of these injuries?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, I think, a major question mark. They were already without Michael Carter. Has been one of the best slot cornerbacks in the league. DJ Reed missed last week. Sauce Gardner clearly got banged up in that game. They also lost one of their starting safeties in Tony Adams. Ashton Davis left the game. Not that he's particularly a meaningful contributor on that defense right now, but at a certain point, you can have great talent and great depth which the Jets have, but they're all hurt right now. And I think certainly when you're looking ahead to a line like the New England game this upcoming week, this is not the same defense that I think the market's giving credit for a top 5 unit, a top 3 unit that they're usually priced in as. And Russell Wilson kind of threw for 250 yards on 29 attempts. He was shredding them deep. You add in, as you said, Eric, the inability to stop the run. And I think this is a pretty vulnerable defense, at least kind of given the current roster. Obviously, that can change with injuries. But looking ahead at the next week or two, I think this is a very vulnerable Jets defense. And I'm not sure the market's fully caught up to just how bad these injuries are, at least looking ahead from our Monday view into next week.
Yeah, Hassan Reddick looks like he's gonna, figure out that contract situation, be back. But that one player is not going to fix all these issues that the New York Jets currently have. Though a pass rusher replays like he has played, of course, would be huge. But definitely concerns for the New York Jets. Judah, as the resident, Suma, as a resident Jets fan, do you want to chime in quickly on your New York Jets? I know you weren't planned on it, but talk to me about what you're seeing from the Jets.
I completely agree with Judah. There is a realistic chance. I don't know whether Sauce got back into the game, but it definitely looked like a bone bruise type mechanism. So wait and see on that. But there's a realistic chance that at least half the secondary is going to be banked up or limited or out again next week. Hassan Reddick will help, but this is just not the same defense anymore, as Judah said. The offense, the run game is basically non-existent. O-line is not run blocking well. The offense basically just dump off to Breece Hall, who is great in space, or just Rodgers trying to execute his favorite plays. I think he got a little bit unlucky yesterday. One interception just bounced out of Garrett Wilson's chest right into the hands of Beanie Bishop. And then the second play I thought was an incredible play by Beanie Bishop. I think at the moment when Rodgers threw that ball, like 98 times out of 100, that would not have been an interception, I guess. But Bishop just made an incredible play. Jets offense is vastly improved compared to last year, even though it doesn't always feel that way. But that combination with still a below average offense and a declining defense is really what this team could not use at this point.
Yeah, like you mentioned with that pick, and also another pick that hit off Garrett Wilson. Some Tomlin voodoo, of course, having to happen, of course, at Acura Stadium last night. But at the same time, definitely more so an indictment on how this Jets defense is, first of all, not healthy and nowhere near playing to the standard that they set over the past couple seasons of what we expected to see from this Jets defense heading in this year. But let's talk about the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels went out very early with a rib injury. It looks like he will be fine, which is a great news for every football fan, as Jaden Daniels is electric to watch. But regardless of Jaden Daniels playing or not, the Carolina Panthers, that injury-riddled and poor defense in the first place, was no match for Marcus Mariota and just this Cliff Kingsbury system. Now, talk to Wasuma. What did you notice about what Kingsbury did to help Mariota succeed? Because obviously we know what Mariota is at this point in his career. Is this system really just so good that it is kind of quarterback agnostic as long as you have that kind of run-pass versatility? Or is this Panthers defense just so bad and the Kingsbury doesn't deserve as much credit as we saw the Washington Commanders offense explode on Sunday?
I think both. I think that the Panthers defense is really, really bad. Also still having injuries on top of that. But I still like that you basically did not see any downgrade in offensive efficiency once Mariota came in. One game has been working. Mariota has been distributing the ball very well. So it was, I guess, very refreshing to see that once Mariota came in, you did not have the feeling that, right now it's a major downgrade for the Commanders offense. And that was very refreshing to see. And I think I have not given Cliff Kingsbury enough credit so far this season.
Yeah, Marcus Mariota, and the way that they ran the offense too, like he was still in attack mode all game long. Even when that game was out of reach, he still wanted Marcus Mariota to go out there execute the offense, run that no huddle that they love to do. And they did it to, absolute amazing success. And Marcus Mariota looked great. Although we do know, again, that Panthers defense is poor, and Jaden Daniels should be hopefully under center for this matchup with Caleb Williams and the Bears on Sunday. Let's shift over to the NFC North and talk about some other teams in that division. The Minnesota Vikings lost to the Detroit Lions in a game where they closed out as favorites. They were coming off a bye week. We know that Detroit came off that massive win against Dallas, and the Lions team, after starting off slow, was able to come back, win this game even after the Vikings had that late lead. Judah, you're concerned about the fragility of Minnesota's offense and the fact that they're often getting themselves in negative game scripts when they, at this point, they were winning this football game and probably had a chance to, pad that lead against a not so great Lions defense. What are you noticing from the Minnesota Vikings offense, Judah?
Yeah, I think it's less so about kind of the propensity to get into negative game states. In fact, I think it's kind of the opposite. It's that they played the first 5 games of the season basically exclusively from ahead. And Sam Darnold has been, for the majority of his career, a fine quarterback instructor. I think that kind of took the leap in Kevin O'Connell's offense. But one of the major question marks, at least I had, and certainly now after this week, is how is he going to perform in kind of a negative game state? What happens when the Vikings need to come back down 10? Right, that's kind of what makes Patrick Mahomes so incredible, is his ability to effectively come back in any game state. But Sam Darnold, then we got a little bit of a sample of him trailing here. He took 17 dropbacks, down relatively big in this game. He had like 2 turnover-worthy plays. He was 8 of 14 for 70 yards, not exactly lighting the world on fire with his yards per attempt. He took a couple of sacks. This was not the same offense. Granted, they got back into this game, but I think if you look at the underlying play, and sure, it's a small sample, I think there is some concern here. And just when looking ahead at the Minnesota Vikings, whether you're betting live or whether you're kind of just handicapping these games, I think the ability for Minnesota to stay in a positive game script is going to be essential for their success. And certainly when looking at the Minnesota Vikings ceiling, I think they are they're not game script agnostic. They need to kind of jump out, do ahead in order to hit on that ceiling.
Definitely understood. And Patrick makes a great point. We'll see if this Vikings offense can bounce back against a poor Rams defense on the short week on Thursday Night Football. But let's keep talking. Let's go to the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, they win ugly in San Francisco. Of course, the Niners lose Debo in that game. Ayuk goes down with a torn ACL, so there was obviously no CMC. On the flip side, Juju goes down for the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, Rashee Rice and Pacheco are out. But Patrick Mahomes and this Chiefs team just still finds a way to win ugly. Suma, what did you like or maybe dislike or just simply notice about this Kansas City Chiefs offense? And what do you expect from them moving forward, especially as this receiver core continues to get rattled by injuries?
Yeah, I mean, they are still very, very scary because their defense is playing at an absurd level right now. And they're just basically success rating opponents to death. On early downs, the Chiefs now rank first in success rate on offense on the season, but their EPA per play is just 14th. Also plays a role that Mahomes has already 8 interceptions on the season, and they really struggle to create many explosives with that receiving group, but they still find so many ways to create necessary yards. It's so hard to stop them. Their one game usually gets them a few good yards, screen game, end rounds, all that stuff. Then all of a sudden there is a 15-yard pass down the seam. So that offense, while everyone is talking about our box score stats, Mahomes is not having a great season, 8 interceptions. That is true on the surface. He's not producing that many great stats, but the offense is still so efficient when gradually moving the ball down the field. And that's, I think, important to notice and just not the box score stats.
Yeah, it's Patrick Mahomes. Of course, he's going to find a way. We know that this Chiefs team struggled as well last year, and they relied so much on Pacheco. And then down the stretch, were able to find their groove and, of course, win the Super Bowl. And at this point, if you're really betting against the Chiefs to, do something, obviously week to week is a whole nother game. You're, of course, more than welcome to fade Mahomes and whoever you want week to week, but you would have to expect that, of course, this 6-0 Chiefs team, they're going to be in the mix in January and probably even February. Let's talk about a team that season is probably over, though. Now there might be some new life injected. Quarterback Deshaun Watson confirmed snapped his Achilles tendon. He will be out for the season, expected to make a full recovery. Not going to comment on the other bits about Deshaun Watson. All we know is this is a quarterback of a team who is no longer going to be starting for the rest of the year. It looks like Jameis Winston is going to be starting. Now, this is an interesting situation, Judith, because before the game, they put Winston as their third-string quarterback. He was only elevated because of the injury to Deshaun Watson during the game. And, of course, we saw him come in and play well. Judah, tell me a little bit about this situation, because, of course, it seemed as if they kind of didn't want Winston to play because they probably know he's good. Like, they know what they have in the building. They go to practice every day. They know who's playing. But do you expect the Browns to now go to Winston and try to maybe make a little something of this season? Are they organizationally tanking? Or do you expect Winston to play and this Browns offense to now take a leap and this team might probably improve moving forward? Just what do you expect to see from the Browns moving forward?
Yeah, I have no idea. I think it's one of the more interesting questions, and certainly kind of where we're situated on a Monday. I think there's going to be some kind of serious line movement or not, I guess. But that can be some sort of signal, depending on whether that or not they go to DTR. I think this line kind of bakes in a little bit of DTR here. And I think when you look at what the Browns did trading away Amari Cooper, that to me signals a bit of a selling method. And they're just kind of like not going to install Joe Flacco as they did last year because they had a chance to compete. But I think there's a pretty decent likelihood that it's still DTR and they're going to see what they have with him. I would just say if they do go to Winston, and I think he's obviously an upgrade over Watson, and I think he's obviously an upgrade over DTR. But I would also just caution their problems go a lot deeper, I think, than just the quarterback. I think the magnitude of how bad this offense has a lot to do with Watson, but this is still an offensive line. Even if we kind of, as best as we can, strip away the quarterback's effect on pressure, they're bottom three in virtually any metric you're going to create. They're allowing a ton of quick pressure. They traded away their best receiver in Amari Cooper. They don't exactly have a ton of separators there. Jerry Jeudy could barely earn himself a target last week. And certainly when you look at Winston's style of play as a guy who holds on to the ball, tries to create a lot, he certainly benefits from an offensive line, unlike I think most other quarterbacks, such that I wouldn't just be going and running and being like, oh, this is such a huge, huge, huge upgrade. I think there are certainly some concerns on that side, but it's going to be a fascinating organizational decision to see how the Browns take it now.
Yeah, and this came out on clevelandbrowns.com just about 30 minutes ago that Stefanski said the team would get more information regarding DTR's injury before making determinations for his status for Wednesday's practice and moving forward. And that Stefanski mentioned that he felt good about Thompson Robinson's availability for the remainder of the season, but need more information as it goes for this upcoming matchup with the Baltimore Ravens. So it could be a moot point potentially, as it's looking like DTR, if he is healthy, with the injury to that throwing hands, could be starting. And but next thing we know, Jameis Winston could be on the trade block to a team a la Miami. I know that's something that TA, our resident Browns fan, has been mentioning on Twitter. And of course, would have loved his insight here, but he's busy. But going to be interesting to see what Cleveland does with that roster, with DTR. And like you mentioned there, Judah, Winston obviously has some pros to his game, but with that kind of offensive line, that lack of pass catching options, going to be tough for probably any quarterback. But Suma, let's talk about a quarterback that is having a down season that we expected to have a great season, and that's CJ Stroud. Now, we talked about this on the show last year. Now, I was a viewer of the show at the time, but I know that there was a lot of mention about Bobby Slowick's early down efficiency, the fact that they do run pass so often, it's so predictable, and it's also just not efficient whatsoever. And that has rolled into this year, and we've seen a lot of these Texans drives start off on just negative foots, which is obviously going to be hard to overcome. Has that remained true so far, Suma? And what have you seen from this offense? Because clearly it's not clicking the way we expect it to. And yes, Nico Collins is out, but still you'd expect more from CJ Stroud and the pass-catching tandem that they have, even without Nico Collins.
Yeah, that offense is concerning to me. They mightily struggled to move the ball on early downs so far this season. And it was basically CJ Stroud bailing them out on these longer third downs. But once that does not happen anymore, or defense might have a good day, CJ Stroud might have a bad day on third down, now all of a sudden that offense is pretty much stalling. And That's what happened against the Packers yesterday. Again, very bad output on early downs, and then on third down there was a lot of pressure by the Packers defense, and all of a sudden that offense crumbled. And on the season they are around 25th-ish in success rate and EPA per play on early downs. And it really comes down to, can CJ Stroud evade pressure on 3rd and 8 and make a good throw downfield? And that's not really a sustainable way to live. I think some part is slow big, some part is the offensive line. And I also think that we in general maybe overrated the Texans supporting cast. Going into last season, their supporting cast was ranked pretty low, and then probably CJ Stroud made everyone look a little bit better than he really is. And this season, I think, also overestimated that supporting cast for the Texans. So I think it's a part of everything. Maybe Stroud is also not having the best season, but I think overall this offense is kind of concerning to me, because you would expect them with that quarterback to be playing a lot better.
Yeah, and they suffered a loss in Green Bay, obviously coming down to the wire there, but their inabilities to sustain some of these drives, and CJ Stroud, box score numbers look away if you are a CJ Stroud fan or you bet his MVP earlier this year. Not looking so hot for Stroud in Houston, and some of these things are definitely concerning for the remainder of the season, as they can't seem to get it going. And Nico Collins is at least a few weeks away from coming back and giving them that alpha receiver. Gentlemen, we're going to discuss the futures market week 8 and, of course, the 2 Monday Night Football games we have. But before we get into those things, we have to shout out FanDuel Sportsbook, our sponsor. Kick off this NFL season with a win on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, all customers get a profit boost every single NFL game day. That means you can pump your gridiron winnings multiple times a week. And for tonight, we have 2 Monday Night Football games, and there is a same game parlay profit boost token available for you at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel has tons of ways you can get in on the NFL action. You can bet on money lines, spreads, player props, and more. Plus, with super simple live betting, lightning fast bet settlement, and instant withdrawals, FanDuel makes betting on the NFL easier than ever before. Visit FanDuel.com/forwardprogress to download FanDuel today. Disclaimer: must be 21 plus and present in select states, or 18 plus and present in DC. Opt-in required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including token expiration. See terms for both offers at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Responsible gaming is a major thing that we take tons of pride in. So those are huge disclaimers. But gentlemen, let's pull up the futures markets. We're going to look at the MVP award market right now, if you can get that going for us, Jason, on FanDuel. Very interesting market we have going on for the MVP award. Of course, a lot of things changing. Patrick Mahomes currently leading the pack as a 6-0 Chiefs, despite the fact that his box score numbers aren't great. But as we know with this award, team success is factored in. Lamar, Josh Allen following. Jared Goff making his way into the top 4. TJ Stroud was hanging around the top 5. And Jordan Love seeing a nice boost. I think he was about 20-1 before that game against the Texans last week. Judah, talk to us. What are you looking at in the MVP market as it currently stands?
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily have a great bet. I just think it's a particularly intriguing market. And I'm curious, kind of Suma or even what you guys would think. Looking at the top of the leaderboard, I think there's kind of like a mass of people in that like 25 range, maybe like a Baker Mayfield. I mean, like, do I think it's going to happen? No. Do I see a possibility of Tampa Bay kind of like sneaking their way to a 12-5 season and leading the charge? I think so. I just when you look at, and I think Josh Allen's probably a right at the top, rightfully so. Lamar Jackson as well, and Patrick Mahomes, of course. But there are certainly some very compelling cases you can make, I think, against all three of those guys. For Mahomes, I mean, certainly the team has gone very run heavy. Even looking at guys like Jared Goff and CJ Stroud. Stroud has not been great. I would be absolutely shocked if Goff wins this award, given certainly the narrative, and this is a narrative award about how much the scheme kind of matters here. I think we saw the fragility of Darnold and Hurts, but looking at guys like Baker Mayfield or even Kirk Cousins, who I think are on teams that can kind of sneak to 11, 12 wins, and you look around at the top of the leaderboard and say, these guys are Allen and Mahomes have not put up their even close to the best statistical seasons. I think there's a case there. I just think as we're situated, it's a particularly interesting market. Because I think there's a lot of mass in kind of that like 5 to 20 range of guys who I think really have effectively no shot, or as much the same shot as a bunch of those kind of longer deep shot type guys.
Yeah, Patrick in the comments makes a comment that he thinks that you can cut it off after the top 3 in market. Judah, obviously right there, you kind of disagree that there could potentially be a little bit down the board, though you're not looking too far down the board. Suma, do you think it's as simple as maybe those 3 guys, and then that's that? Obviously, the odds are short on them, and maybe it's not a great bet to make at this point in time. But you really think it's a 3-man race, and it should be a 3-man race?
Pretty much, I agree with what Judah said. The thing about Patrick is Mahomes, not the Patrick from the comments, is that for all his bad stats, so to speak of, their schedule is becoming way more easy. There are not a lot of strong defenses down the road for the Chiefs. So I think there's, even from a statistical point of view, there's going to be some regression towards the upside for Mahomes. And they are unbeaten. Let's say they go, 15-2. He gets also better in the box score department. I mean, there are people on Twitter saying, how in the world can Patrick Mahomes be the favorite to win MVP? Look at his net yards per play and touchdown to interception ratio. But they might have by far the best record in the entire NFL, and his box score should get better from now on. That's my take on this. Odds-wise, I don't have a strong opinion.
Yeah, and Cottage makes a good point in the comments that no one knows it's going to be the best team in January. Tough wager because, again, as we mentioned and as we know, there is a team factor, a team success factor that goes into winning, and that's a great point, especially considering those prices now. If you're looking at any of those 3 guys, if you see maybe a loss or 2 coming up, obviously tough to predict that as well, considering the Chiefs' schedule too, could find a time to buy in. And prior to that Chiefs 49ers game, it could have maybe a time to look at a Brock Purdy. But now, as we saw what went down at Levi Stadium, that's probably not going to happen this year with the 49ers clearly struggling. But, gentlemen, we have a couple of Week 8 games we want to take a look at. Then, of course, we have a Monday night doubleheader we're going to discuss. And Judah has a same-game parlay we want to talk about. But we just saw a report, it was either late last night or earlier today, that Tua Tagovailoa is looking like he's going to play this upcoming week against the Arizona Cardinals, who, of course, play tonight, hosting Los Angeles Chargers. Suma, what do you make of this Dolphins team with Tua coming back? Of course, we know Snoop Huntley got hurt. We know Tim Boyle has never won a game for the NFL career, so obviously he can't be doing anything. But it's so tough with Tua because, again, I'm no doctor and I'm not trying to make a crazy claim, but he seriously looks at this point like he is one major hit away again from probably having to call it quits in his career, considering his play style, this offensive line. That's something that you could probably bank on him having to get hit. It's the nature of the sport he plays and the position he plays. But what do you think about this Dolphins offense? We can't be seeing Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle combining for no targets in the first half again, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if he's back, he's probably going to be close to 100%, close to his former self. Unless there are some long-term injuries that we don't know about. But however, I think if he gets medically cleared, he should be playing like the old Tua. It will be significantly better than what we saw for the past 4 weeks. Tim Boyle is an absolute privilege to watch. But my question is, what's the ceiling going to look like? Because even with Tua, this has not been a good offense. to start the season. Their offensive line outside of Terron Armstead is a major problem. So it will be somewhere between last season and the past 4 weeks, significantly upgraded, but the ceiling really remains to be seen.
Yeah, definitely. And Patrick makes a good point. Why went to wear a Guardian cap? That's a whole conversation maybe for another time, because I think that should be mandated across the league. I don't know if the fashion aspect is more important than your playing career and your health in the future, but we'll digress there. But that line being 3.5, I'm going to go to you, Jude, even though you didn't say you had thoughts on this, but Miami laying 3.5. I know we don't know what to expect from Arizona to see how they play this week. Of course, play the Chargers tonight, but even considering if Tua is back at 100% health, do you think this line is going to sit closer to 3.5, even if the Cardinals lose, but say close one then against Los Angeles?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right to point to what happens tonight probably influences that in some way. But I do think there's at least value, and I'm looking ahead to the Dolphins alts here. Just looking at, yes, the Dolphins offense was fine in week 1. They lit up the Jaguars for 300 passing yards. Tua threw a whole bunch of picks in that Bills game before going out. We have a decent sample of this Dolphins offense, especially against poor defensive opponents. Right, we're on year 3 of Tua, Waddle, and Hill, and maybe I'm coaching my bets a little too much here, but I would like to think that there are 0 restrictions on Tua going into this game. I don't think, to be frank, it's any different than last season or early this season. We knew Tua was always like one more concussion away from disaster. It seems like that already happened, but I'm not sure anything tangibly changes there. And this is still an offense that can put up 40 points quick. I do think that, yes, Terron Armstead's been hurt, but this is also an offense that gets rid of the ball in 2.3 seconds, which kind of mitigates the effects of an offensive line. And against an Arizona defense, which is really reeling, this is a team I think that can put up a whole bunch of points. But obviously, I'm not betting it right now. We don't really know what Tua's injury situation is. Obviously, those reports are positive, but it is far from a certainty at this point.
One certainty is that Tua mentioned in a press conference he won't wear the Guardian cap on his helmet because of his personal choice, and that he just wants to be more available for his team. You'd think wearing the Guardian cap would be correlated to being more available for your team. But again, that's not something that we can discuss or change, unfortunately. Though it is an interesting topic, maybe for the offseason, about potentially mandating or contract incentives for it, something along those lines. Again, not really our place, but definitely interesting. Jude, we're going to stick with you and talk about this New York Jets, New England Patriots game. We already discussed, of course, the Jets defense and their inability to get stops, and also the injuries piling up, especially in that secondary. And we have Drake May. We have 2 games with Drake May. Started off hot in London, but the Jacksonville Jaguars then went on a little bit of a run. We know that this Patriots defense is abysmal, and this offense, of course, lacks separators, pass catchers, and playmakers. The New York Jets currently laying 7 on the road. This is after playing Sunday night, and of course, the Patriots traveling back from Wembley Stadium. What do you make of this line, Judah?
Yeah, so it's moved a bit. I think it opened at 6.5. I saw it 7.5 right before we were about to record this one. Again, I think the Jets' injuries matter a lot here, and I'm not sure the market has kind of fully caught up. But there's been a bunch of injury funkiness where there have been known injuries coming out of Sunday in the market, then waits till Wednesday to update. Like Andrew Thomas, if you were reading the pressers, there is clearly a serious problem of his injury, and it seemed that, maybe I'm just reading in a bit too much, and this is the example that's top of mind. It seemed very likely, based on what everyone was saying and what he was saying, that he was going to miss the game. I don't think the market has fully caught up yet to the extent of these Jets injuries, and I think that's going to maybe take its toll on Wednesday. I also think the over-under here is pretty interesting. The Jets pass rush could absolutely be a massive, massive problem for New England, who's obviously struggled on the offensive line. Though I would say I'm getting more and more impressed with Drake May's ability to handle pressure. Only took a couple of sacks last week. And I think that the Jets should be able to score here. The offense has not been the problem. I think a bunch of turnovers there influence that score and from last night's game and make that look a lot different. But they've been moving the ball effectively. And I would not be shocked again, especially given the state of the Jets secondary, if New England can kind of keep up on the other side. I think just looking at the line movement, there's perhaps some value on the New England side just by virtue of the injuries. And then I'd also lean a little bit towards the over, given what we've seen from Drake May, and again, given the state of the Jets defense right now.
Yeah, I like that over in the Wembley game. Of course, it didn't hit, as we saw, it came down right to that wire there. It did with that Tank Bigsby final, the touchdown to get in to kill that. But the same thought process was there. Obviously, Drake May showed some potential, plays against a horrific pass defense, and we saw a decent amount of movement from them. But on the flip side, the Patriots defense is also awful. And we saw that the Jaguars got what they want. I think there was a point, if I remember correctly, listening to the broadcast, that the Jaguars ran it, I think, 17 straight times. The New York Jets, I don't know if they're capable of putting together those kinds of running games. But at the same time now, with Garrett Wilson in the slot, maybe they can get those quick drives, just keep maintaining possession. And it seems like points, allowing points for both the defenses is something that they're very familiar with there. But let's go to a fun one that if this was 2 years ago, we would have been so excited for. But this year, it's really to see who's going to come out of the basement. The Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers going. This game is, just making sure I get the right spread here from Fanduel. If you could pull it up, thank you. We have San Francisco laying 5.5 at home. Dallas getting 5.5 coming off the bye week. Suma, talk to me about Dallas, San Francisco, because we know that Dallas' defense has been poor this season, but these injuries for the Niners, we know Shanahan's a wizard, but man, that's going to be tough, right?
Yeah, some very interesting uncertainty with this one, I would guess. Do the Dallas Cowboys change anything on offense coming out of a bye week? Their one game was basically non-existent. The offense was a little bit like the Jets offense, where Dak Prescott basically has to be perfect, throw into tight windows for this offense to function. Did they change anything? Wait and see mode. Is Micah Parsons back? On the other side, the Niners, no Brandon Ayuk. John Jennings was out with a hand injury, I guess. Debo should be back from his illness, even though maybe he might not fully practice until like Thursday or Friday because he was coughing when he left the game. I think Brandon Ayuk not playing for a long time now is might be an issue, a major issue for the 49ers offense, because he really stretches the field. He runs a lot of deep routes. He did not have the deep production this season, but Purdy really was kind of living in that deep passing game. And now Ayuk, I mean, that might have a bigger impact on the offense than we anticipate. Even if it's Kyle Shanahan, he might be forced to create a more traditional passing game, so to speak. CMC, I think he will be back week 10 or something. So this is a pretty banged up Niners offense with a quarterback that is has probably always been a little bit overrated. So I'm really interested to see how Shanahan will design this offense when he has so many guys on injury reserve now.
It's going to be very difficult. Of course, just missing CMC, we talked about on the show a few times how the red zone efficiency for the 49ers went down. Now missing Ayuk. If Debo can come back, of course, that helps. But now we're going to see how much trouble they have moving the football throughout, even to get to that red zone, though, of course, we do know they'll want to rely on Jordan Mason in that run game, who's also been banged up this season. So a lot to note for the San Francisco 49ers as they pursue another potential run to the Super Bowl. And right now we're sitting behind the Seattle Seahawks in the NFC West. So huge game for the Niners, huge game for the Cowboys, of course, want to bounce back, and a lot of adversity for the San Francisco offense moving forward. But guys, we made it to the moment we've been waiting for. Let's talk about some Monday Night Football. We have a doubleheader. I'm just going to go on the limb. Love the doubleheader. Great. If you don't have two TV screens at this point, you're a sports fan, what are you waiting for? You got to have two screens to be able to watch multiple games at the same time. Don't know what you're waiting for at this point. But first matchup, we have the Baltimore Ravens heading to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. Of course, we know about Lamar Jackson and his dominance over NFC opponents in his career. Of course, this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team has been really good. And this Ravens team, their defense has not been what we've expected in terms of pass defense, at least, as they're one of the better run defense in all football. but that might be a little bit, tailored to some of the tough opponents that Baltimore's played so far. But we're going to start with you, Suma. Talk to me about your thoughts on this Ravens-Buccaneers matchup. Baltimore laying 3.5 on the road, total sitting 49.5.
Yeah, I think that we might see a lot of scores in this one. I'm on the over. We talked about it last Wednesday, although I will say at a slightly better number than what the market is right now. I like the matchup for the Ravens offense. I think that this Bucs defense, yes, they have been getting a few bodies back in recent weeks, but I don't think they are equipped to really stop the one here against the Ravens. They are also very susceptible to play action, and the Ravens have been doing an incredible job on play action so far this year. So I think that the Ravens will have a lot of space to operate in for a decent offensive outing. But on the other hand, I'm also quite high on the Bucs offense, and I think that if they are a little bit smart and not go too run heavy against this Ravens defense, there's certainly some path for Baker Mayfield to get something going through the air. Mike Evans is off the injury report. He was there with a hamstring injury earlier this week, didn't practice, but he's off, should be good to go. I think Baker can sling it against this Ravens secondary, and this sets up for a very entertaining and hopefully high-scoring game.
Hopefully high-scoring if you have that over like Suma's sitting on right now. Judah, talk to us about how you're viewing this one. Obviously, again, Lamar 22-1 straight up against the NFC on the road, 10-1 straight up, 7-4 against the spread. Not saying that is that meaningful. Of course, every game is a matchup by matchup in its own singular entity. But how are you viewing this one, Judah?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different ways this game can play out. I guess I'll outline a couple of pathways that I see. Full stop, the Ravens offense is a house right now. I think they're probably, if not the best offense, the second best offense in football right now. And where Lamar Jackson has been especially good is in his ability to evade sacks this year, where he's kind of cut from his career rate by about like 6-7%, which I think is a massive difference. And obviously this rushing offense has been great. I think that the Ravens can beat anyone running the ball. I think they probably will. The Bucs defense, I think a lot of the early season numbers without Vita Vea are entirely misleading. He is absolutely essential to Tampa Bay's ability to stop the run. I think that if they stop the run, and that's a big if, and we're probably going to see some sort of regression at some point. Again, I don't know if it's going to be this week or down the line in Lamar Jackson, in the sack avoidance, and kind of in these obvious passing situations where he's historically been a lot worse. Can that continue? Of course. Do I expect it to? No. And I think that's kind of the pathway for the Bucs to slow down the Ravens. That would also be an angle for the under. And I think we can absolutely say almost the same case on the reverse side, where Baker Mayfield last year he really struggled when the Bucs were in a lot of these third and long, he got into a lot of these third and long situations and kind of had an unsustainable rate of success on those late downs. But the Bucs have been able to run the ball extremely relative to when they don't play Rashad White, relative to their 2023 version of this team. But I think that changes against probably the best run defense in football in the Ravens. I think, again, we can see a lot of these obvious passing situations where Baker Mayfield has an extremely high pressure to sack rate. He's this year at his career average around 30%, which is one of the worst in the league. I think that's a way that you can kind of stall drives. I think these are both cases towards the under. Then again, would it be entirely shocking if we see a game like how the previous games for these teams have gone? No, of course not. And that's like a Ravens defense, which has struggled to defend the pass, a Bucs defense, which frankly is helpless against the Ravens offense that is scoring at will. I think there are a lot of different avenues to this game. But I do think there are some of these under cases that are perhaps overlooked a bit.
No, certainly. It's never as simple, of course, as bad offense or good offense, bad defense, scoring points. Of course, there's ways that these two teams go about it. And like you said, those injuries for Tampa, now getting some of these guys back, of course, we're going to see some different metrics and probably some positive regression for this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. But John, let's talk about this next game. And of course, Judah, you have your same game parlay, so we'll go to you second. We have the Chargers in Arizona right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. The Cardinals are plus 1.5 home underdogs, total 44.5 over that key number of 44. And there's been a more movement in the market in this one. This one opened if we're looking at a different sportsbook, it opened at Los Angeles -2, got up to 2.5, now down to 1, showing probably some money there on the Arizona Cardinals. And this total, of course, opened at 43.5, got down, got that up, got back down, but now we're seeing it again over this key number of 44. So how are you viewing this Cardinals-Chargers matchup?
I like the Chargers a little bit here, even though the market does not seem to agree all that much. I think the Chargers have a very intriguing matchup in the trenches. I think the Cardinals defense is really, really bad. And I think if the Chargers can run the ball a little bit better here in the spot, and Justin Herbert will have more clean pockets, especially that the interior pass protection of the Chargers has been very bad this year, but the Cardinals do not seem to produce too much pressure from their interior defensive line. So I think Justin Herbert should have more clean pockets. And even with a slightly banged up receiving group, I think he should still be able to get passes out. So I think the Chargers should be able to move the ball on that defense. And then on the other side, I think, yes, the Chargers metrics are a little bit schedule dependent, but I still think that Jesse Mita has been doing an incredible job. They can really stop the run. And with the Cardinals also banked up along the offensive line, I think if they cannot run the ball, they do not seem to have a plan B. And that might come into fruition today, where the Chargers might be very good on early downs, and then they force Kyler into longer passing situations. And then he basically has to have a very good day, needs some variance to go his way. Overall, I slightly lean towards the Chargers here, like their matchup, but I think Judah will come in and do some counterpoints.
All right, Judah, this is what we've been waiting for. Talk to us about your view and what tails you're looking to capitalize on in this Cardinals-Chargers game.
Yeah, I've got no counterpoints to that. I actually I agree with you there. I think that the Chargers are in probably as good a spot as they've been all season, and Justin Herbert's healthy. But we're going to focus on the other side of the ball, and I think that is in part because I think it fits in well with that game script that Suma just outlined, and also one in which the Cardinals win, and that's looking at kind of how teams. Well, first I should say, Suma kind of briefly mentioned this, but I certainly agree that the Chargers defense, which shows up extremely well in a lot of metrics, has a lot to do with their opponents. I think somehow this is probably the best offense they've faced this season. And I think that a lot of the results, certainly without Joey Bosa and Christian Fulton, who's been a revelation for them at corner this year, also looks, I think, on the wrong side of questionable, unless there's some news that I've missed while we're recording this. And I think that's certainly going to ding up this offense. And that's to say that this is an offense, as Suma said, which can stop the run. And I do think that Arizona is going to attack through the air. And then when you look at how LA kind of filters targets, it's kind of KC light in that they are forcing targets to opposing running backs and tight ends. They have faced opponents have had a league low 13 targets per game to opposing wide receivers, but are leading the NFL in targets to running backs at 8.2. James Conner has not yet had those receiving games, but he is still the predominant. He's running a ton of routes. He's going to lose some third down work to, I cannot pronounce his name, but to their third down running back. That's not great optics, but either way, he still runs. The point is he still runs a bunch of routes. Demarcado. I don't know. You know who that is.
Demarcado.
Yeah, exactly. Either way, getting back on track here, he still runs a majority of routes on this team at running back, and I think can see a bunch of dump offs. And certainly, if they're struggling to get the ground game going, I also think that this is a team that will kind of use the screen game as an extension of the run game. All of that is to say, I think Connor gets peppered with a bunch of targets here. I think Kyler Murray has a successful day. And when you look at the Cardinals wide receiver room, Greg Dortch has kind of been the odd man out. Now he's kind of splitting work at the wide receiver 3. And again, this is a Chargers team that's going to filter targets to running backs, to tight ends. I expect a lot of work to go to Trey McBride, to Marvin Harrison, to Michael Wilson, and to James Conner, that I don't think there's a lot of work to go to Greg Dortch. So I think we get a Kyler Murray 250 passing yards. We've got James Conner at 5 receptions and 25 yards, and Greg Dortch under 22.5. Essentially, to recap, we've got a Chargers defense that I think is their metrics are overperforming their actual quality of defense by virtue of the opponents they face. They filter targets to running backs and tight ends, especially given the lack of production from Conner, though not really a change in role. I think there's still room to kind of buy that tail relative to a Trey McBride. And I think Greg Dortch kind of is the odd man out here, given that he is only splitting snaps right now at the wide receiver 3. We get a nice kind of inverse correlation with his under and Kyler over passing yards.
Very nice reverse correlation, helping those SGP odds. Judah looking to hit a banger. We know he's capable. It's obviously tough when you're singling out a couple of games, but this is a situation where Judah's made some great points as to why it could be a Cardinal stack against this Chargers defense, like Suma mentioned, has played well, very, very well, but against a sketchy, for lack of a better word, group of opposing offenses, not the best whatsoever. But that's going to wrap it up for us on Forward Progress. We appreciate your viewership every single week. Make sure you hit that like button to show support to the channel. Of course, subscribe to make sure you never miss any content. The team does content all week long, especially the Best Bet Show. And, of course, on Wednesday and the primetime watch-along parties. Always so much fun, so make sure you subscribe to not miss out on those. Back same time next week with the same exact setup as always. We appreciate you guys. Thank you, and best of luck with your wagers tonight.